related to our family as well. And again, we've made that commitment to be transparent and to find out what the solutions are. Governor, thank you so much for all the help.
Thank you so much. And so one of the state leaders who is really on the front line of addressing this is the commissioner in charge of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and that is Toby Baker. Toby.
Thank you, Governor. I also want to start by just saying the collective heart of TCEQ goes out to the family of Josiah. Also with my own boys, 10 and 8. It's hard to imagine what they're facing right now. And so I'm making the commitment that we will be with the city however they need us, whenever they need us, until we get this sorted out. We've been embedded with the city since Saturday. Our employees have been working 24 hours a day to try to remedy the problem that's going on in the drinking water system. Out of an abundance of caution on Friday night, we, in conjunction with the governor's office, issued a do not use order for the users of Brazos Port Water Authority's water. I want to be very clear that BWA's water is safe. The residuals in their distribution system are high, and we have no reason for any sort of to think there's any problems with their distribution system or the water there. On Saturday, we did 54 samples of Lake Jackson's water, and we found 11 sites with residuals that were below disinfectant levels. That made us comfortable on focusing on the Lake Jackson city as the area of concern, and we now have a plan in place to move forward that came through lots of discussions with CDC, with our state partners in Louisiana. It's important to note that this amoeba is very, very rare. I don't believe we've ever had, to my knowledge, the amoeba show up in a public drinking water system in the state of Texas. The path forward for the citizens of Lake Jackson is not going to be one that's short. We have to get through the boil water notice first, which could take 2 to 3 weeks. After that, we have to get chlorine levels to a state that can burn the entire system, scour the system, and kill the amoebas. That could take up to an additional 60 days. The CDC is going to be part of that process with us, and they've committed to come in and do testing on the backside to make sure that we've taken care of the problem. We also, at the same time, will be helping with cross-connection surveys to see if there are any places where unfiltered water is entering the water system that the city doesn't know about. And we will be assisting with that process as it moves forward. We will continue to work with the city, with local leaders, and we will do everything possible to get the citizens of Lake Jackson back in a state where they can trust the water that they're drinking, they can trust their system, and you have our full commitment to help do that. And thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
Thank you. Well, this obviously is a public health issue, and as a result, we have the involvement of the Department of State Health Services and the Commissioner with us here today, Commissioner Dr. Hellerstedt.
Thank you, Governor. I'm John Hellerstedt. I'm the Commissioner for the Texas Department of State Health Services. And the most important point I want to make for folks today is a follow-on from what Toby Baker, the Executive Commissioner, Executive Director for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality made. That is, from a medical standpoint, the science is very clear. When the system is able to achieve the appropriate high regulatory amounts of disinfectant in the system, it kills all the germs that cause human disease, and the drinking water is safe. And that is exactly the project that's being undertaken right now, is to look into that, to look at the water system here. Your city manager is committed to it. All of your leaders are committed to it, and they will be able to do it. And once they have achieved that and measured that achievement, the water will be safe. And we know it is safe already in the other parts of the Brazoria water system. This is a real tragedy. It is an extremely rare disease. And it is even even rarer to know of any source from a municipal water system that this would occur. It certainly hasn't happened in Texas in anyone's memory. So this is a tragedy. It's a rare tragedy, but now we have the opportunity to look in depth at the water systems here and elsewhere and make sure that they're achieving the appropriate levels of disinfectant so that the water system is safe, and it will be safe against every germ that causes human disease. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, NIMKIT.
Thank you, Governor. Our prayers are with the family of Josiah. Our actions are providing safe drinking water for the citizens of Lake Jackson. Our teams have seen 4,500 cars drive through our point of distribution, distributed over 6,500 cases of water. And to echo the Governor's points, the private sector partners and the volunteers that have donated and staffed and the grocers that continue to put water on their shelves, make it available, we will continue to work with them as well as support any of the city's state resource needs. Thank you.
Very good. We'll take questions. Yes. Sure. For the local water testing, I'm going to have the city manager answer that. For the broader perspective, I'll have the head of the TCEQ answer that question.
I believe we test the water monthly, I believe, and then we provide all of those results to the TCEQ.
That's correct. We receive quarterly reports from the city that shows their residual levels, the disinfectant levels. We also then receive monthly reports as well showing the bacteria levels. The city does 30 bacteria samples per month. They're required to do that. And the interesting thing here, and one of the things we're going to get to the bottom of, is the residual samples that we have in our records show that there would be nothing of concern up until this point in the city. So we will definitely be investigating that further.
Can you recall the date of when that last testing occurred?
Let me just check. So the second quarter, from April to June of 2020, the disinfectant that was turned in at the end of the second quarter. That was June. We should have had a monthly report since then as well.
Yes.
Why weren't residents informed here of the possibility of using the water system?
Sure. I will need to have either the mayor or the city manager answer that question for you.
We found out on the 25th that there was a possibility that it could be in the system after we received a positive test. When we were notified by the county working with the CDC that there was a possibility of Josiah playing in our fountain, we shut it down immediately, but we had not had the ability to test. Our initial test that we received, we conducted it on the 10th, and on the 14th it came back negative. Then we were still working with the CDC and the state to do initial secondary testing that was much better testing than the initial one. That collection was made on the 22nd. We received a positive result on the 25th, but it was more than I believe the family had several locations at their house tested. We had our splash pads tested, and also we tested a part of the distribution system, and then we had 3 positive tests. So on the 25th, we were aware of that, and that was we had those results with the DSHS and the CDC at the same time, and that started the chain reaction of notifying everyone.
Sure.
This tragic incident, should Texas be testing every CD water supply that we have in the state? Because obviously this is going on there, and people probably are thinking, should I be drinking this water if this is happening in Lake Jackson?
Sure. It was kind of my understanding from what Toby, the head of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, that they get reports about water tests on an ongoing basis. So
Yes, that's right, Governor. The disinfectant level in the system is an indicator as to whether there's an issue. So When we're getting those reports, or the city is taking their report, doing their samples, if the levels are high enough, there shouldn't be any issues. So there aren't specific tests for the amoeba. What we test are the actual disinfectant levels that are in the system, and if those are high enough, it should be protective. So, and that does happen all across the state of Texas. Those sampling and those tests are happening across the state.
So if
There's no plan of testing anyone in particular just because of levels being low in any of the state locations.
They are testing on a regular basis as part of their, if you're operating a public water system, you have to do ongoing and regular testing of those disinfectant levels. So that is happening on a regular basis.
So the commissioner in charge of the Department of State Health Services would also like to add some information about that.
Yes, I think to allay people's fears, especially about the amoeba itself, it is a very rare disease, and we know the only way that you can get it is to have that contaminated water go up your sinuses and basically then lodge there at the top of the sinuses and work its way from there through a membrane, if you will, a bony membrane that goes into the brain, and that's where the infection starts. There is no other way to get it. You cannot get that infection from drinking the water or merely showering in it or that sort of thing. You have to get it deep up your sinuses, and that's part of the reason why it's such a rare occurrence for that to happen.
Yes.
The CDC said a similar amoeba was found in Louisiana in 2013 in a community that had suffered some population loss after Hurricane Katrina and their water usage levels had dropped. I'm just curious if there's any indication that something similar happened here where maybe water usage levels in the area had dropped to a point where the amoeba was able to kind of grow and live.
Toby or Dr. H?
I mean, I think the investigation is ongoing. I think we'd have to work with the city to explore that idea, but there's at this point it's too early to speculate, I think, as to what caused it.
Yvonne?
Yeah, just looking at other communities that have been impacted with a death by this amoeba in the past, what have you grasped are the chances of this amoeba here locally killing more people or missing more people?
I'm going to let the experts add to this, but from what I've been able to gather from the meetings that we've had today, all information points to this being isolated. All information is that the treatments that are being provided immediately will allay any additional concerns. The immediate suspected cause of this was a splash pad that has now been shut down and non-operational. And so the concern about this being replicated is minimal. That's a layman's response based upon information I've been able to gather. A better response will come from people like Dr. Hellerstadt and maybe from Tubby Baker.
Governor, I would only add from a scientific standpoint that the risk is vanishingly small, which is the same thing as saying minimal. So you're absolutely right. You can never say zero, but really it's zero because there's just not going to be a chance that the water is going to contain this amoeba in the public water system after they finish the kinds of remediation efforts that they put forward. So it's not going to be in the public water system. I would really want to point out, though, too, this amoeba is present in many, many places in the environment. If you went into pretty much any natural body of water in Texas, especially this time of the year, we're now starting to cool off, but in the warmer months of the year, you would be able to find and recover this amoeba. And so the fact that even though it is in many, many places in Texas, in bodies of water that people swim in and have recreation in, but we see so few cases, that tells you that the mechanism of getting infected that I described is extremely unusual and extremely rare and difficult. This is a terrible tragedy that made something that was rare, and even vanishingly rare, actually happened. But the things that can take place going forward will make the city water system safe, and there will not be amoeba in it to a level that would cause anyone any harm.
And I did have a follow-up question on when you get infected by it, do you have an ability to stop the infection before you die? And what's the time span from being infected to death?
My understanding of it, I'm not an infectious disease expert in this particular infection. This has a very high case fatality rate. So once people get infected, it is generally fatal.
Couple more guys.
Sure. Brett?
Yes, I have a question from a local perspective, and I'd like to gentleman from DCQ to take it. You mentioned that there were several, more than I have heard previously, tests done that surround BWA's distribution cities. Were those done in other cities, or have there only at this point been tests done in Lake Jackson?
We did residual samples in BWA because they're the distribution line that gets those other ones. CDC only did their testing in Lake Jackson, and so then we went to Lake Jackson and we did a very wide sampling. We put a very wide sampling protocol in place and found multiple places in the Lake Jackson system where the disinfectant was below state minimum levels. And so that pretty clearly to us showed us that that's where the issue is, and that's where CDC was focused as well. So that and that's where obviously Josiah was, we think, got the contracted the amoeba, and so we're confident that Lake Jackson is where the problem is.
Last question, PPRK, real quick, Kristen.
Yes, this is also for EPEQ. I was wondering, you mentioned kind of examining the cross connection to see if it's getting into the system from some other place. How long does that take, and is that really enough time? I'm kind of curious from the timeline you mentioned, 2 to 3 weeks oil notice, but is that really enough time to really do a thorough examination and the flush?
So there's going to be 2 prongs that are going to have to happen. One is focused on the disinfectant side, and so that is 2 to 3 weeks to get through the boil water notice. That takes care of the bacteria concerns that we have associated with the low residuals in the distribution system. At that point, the city is going to be asked to up their chlorine to 1 milligram per liter. It's going to be very high chlorine levels in the system. Once they get to that level, they're going to have to keep the entire system at that level for 60 days. This is what they did in Louisiana, and this is the CDC protocol that we're talking back and forth with them about. At the same time, they're going to have to do the cross-connection surveys that I mentioned and try to, at that point, you bring in people who are experts at this, who have specialty licenses, and they look and they see anywhere in the city where unfiltered water might be getting into the system. I can't speak to the time frame of that. My hope is that it lines up pretty closely with the time frame associated with the disinfectant side, but we'll know that answer soon.
Thanks, guys. Good one. Appreciate it.
Will Dupree here in Austin and bringing you this briefing from Governor Abbott and other state leaders, including the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They're talking about a deadly brain-eating amoeba that is apparently located in the water supply in Lake Jackson, Texas. That's about an hour south of Houston. Unfortunately, a 6-year-old boy named Josiah died after contracting that amoeba. What happens is that the experts were saying that the amoeba somehow gets into the nasal cavity and then works its way up into the sinuses and then eventually into the brain, and it is a fatal condition whenever that happens. So what they were saying is that there is a boil water notice in effect right now for Lake Jackson, Texas, and will be for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And then the city will have to do another 60 days of flushing and work with its pipes because that amoeba is apparently located in the water supply in that community just about an hour south of Houston. We do have more information about this on our website. That's kxan.com, as well as on the KXAN News app on your smartphone. So please look at that if you'd like to find out a little bit more information. For now, I'm Will Dupree once again here at KXAN in Austin. Thanks so much for joining us. Please, everyone, stay safe and stay healthy.